Good morning and welcome to the JBLM AUSA Family Forum. The Senior Spouse Steering Committee this morning is the first portion of the Family Forum that's brought to you by Colonel Hodges and AUSA. And I would like to introduce the Director of Family Readiness at AUSA National, which is Patty Barron up here on the front. It was her idea to put this on the road and bring it here. And then I would also like to introduce to you Alicia Grady, who is the moderator for this first session, so you're going to see her up here a lot. She's the Chief of Armed Forces Community Service here at JBLM. Many of you probably recognize her from Community Update every month as she speaks about things going on. She's been in that position since August of 2012 and has been involved in a variety of ACS, Army Community Service positions, since 1994, so she has a wealth of experience. So please, we're going to listen to our folks here, and then if you have a question, you need to use the microphone because it's being recorded, and that's the way we capture your question for posterity. All right? Thanks.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. I would like to introduce, so you all know Colonel Chuck Hodges. He is our Joint Base Commander. Next to him is Mr. Bill Harvey. He is the Director of Family Morale, Welfare, and Recreation. And next to him is Mark Brown, and he is the Director of Human Resources. So today we're going to discuss just briefly what it means from Army Family Covenant to Total Army Strong. We're also going to discuss programs that fall under DFMWR and DHR and what could be some potential impacts with funding cuts that are looming in the near future and how JBLM will approach deciding, if we have to, which programs could potentially be scaled back or cut. So I'm going to let each panel member just very briefly give a couple words on what your thoughts are, and then we're going to open it up to all of you to ask questions because we have the three subject matter experts here today. So, sir?
Experts?
Yes.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks for coming out. And Madeline, I love changing it, getting rid of senior. More experience, wiser steering crew like that than seniors. The older I get, I don't like that senior attached to me going on there. But no, thanks for coming out and to talk about. I'm mic'd up because they want to tape it or something. So, okay, all right. To talk about what was the Army Family Covenant and now what Army Strong is going to become. And I wish I could sit here today and say definitively, here are the answers to all the questions you're going to have, but we don't know. An Army Family Covenant was put into place. Resources were flowing freely, and we've seen over the past 3 years I've been here, as we've seen services go off as the funding's gone away. And the one I always remember right away is free childcare at the gyms. So as we move forward, and we're going to list up there, all the programs that are out there are probably up for potential reduction or elimination as we move forward. Again, based purely on the financial considerations that have to be made. Now, as we go forward from a big Army perspective, and I'll talk big Army on this one now, and what's get cut and what goes away, who knows? And because if you ask a base right now, if you go across the bases out there and said, what's our most important program that we have on Fort X or Base Y, they will tell you something differently. And so when Big Army starts racking and stacking, and we've done that now with a lot of our ready and resiliency programs, we had the commanders come in and say, what's the most important thing for your organizations? The gyms. That was it. Number one was gyms, okay? Number two were the child development centers. And then you started getting down to these other programs that we thought would have been much higher on the priority list. And some people said, no, we don't care at all. You can cut that tomorrow. So again, when the big Army makes these decisions, I think it's going to be difficult for them to say, what do we want? We don't know because everybody has something differently. That being said, today is an opportunity and over the coming months for JBLM's voice to be heard in terms of what we think needs to stay and what we think are our top priorities. And because we are, of the three super bases out there, if you consider Fort Bragg, Fort Hood, and JBLM, we're one of the three super bases. From a FORSCOM perspective, our voice, we would hope to think, gets heard a little more than others. And so again, I look forward today, I look forward to your questions. They're going on. and then further discussion about what you guys think are the most important things out there. One cool thing, can I tell one cool thing, Alicia? Transition Services, one of our programs. I spent the past 2 days with UPS, United Parcel Service. They just agreed with me yesterday, they're going to start, we're going to be our largest employer. So they're going to start looks like a 25 soldier or service member per cohort to train managers for the entire nation, drivers, as well as IT professionals through our Microsoft program. So they came in, saw our program, and have put ink on paper and said, hey, we want to be your #1 partner. So it's good news again for our experienced, wisdom-wise steering committee. As your husbands all start getting used to that and get ready going on there are great opportunities here at JBLM for them to transition if they choose to take that path. So that was not part of today, but I had to get it in.
Mr. Harvey, do you want?
So good morning. I'd like to just take a real quick moment for any of you that may be not familiar with what they're calling the bin chart, which is up on the screen there. This is an attempt by Army leadership to prioritize, as Colonel Hodges said, when you go from base to base, you get different priorities of programs. But this is an attempt by the Army leadership to get input from all of the major commands and others, and at least give the local installation commanders something to go by as far as what they think may be the most priority type programs, and particularly where the appropriated funds will fall. Now in MWR, as I think you know, we have two kinds of money, appropriated funds, which flows to us through a UFM process. You don't really need to know about that, and then non-appropriated funds, which are funds that we generate here locally on the installation, as well as AFI's dividends that we receive through a formula. If you could go to the last part of that, the low-risk ones. So the ones that, typically I would think that the ones that, the high-risk ones, we're probably not going to see much impact in those. Lesser so in the medium ones, obviously. And then this is probably the area where we would anticipate having to make some changes if we get significant budget reductions. Now what that means, for example, in some of the MWR program areas, you can pick any of these, arts and crafts, auto crafts, we receive both appropriated funds and non-appropriated funds in those programs. So if our appropriated funds are significantly reduced, we might have to seriously look at closing arts and crafts, for example, because the non-appropriated funds that we generate through that program would not necessarily be enough to operate that program at a break-even, on a break-even basis. Now, the commander certainly has the flexibility to subsidize certain programs. In other words, we could choose to operate that program in the red. And in doing so, then we would have to take profits from other programs across the installation to make up that loss. So it's kind of the process that we would have to go through. We do receive a substantial amount of appropriated funds in these programs here, and we may have to make some serious choices down the road as we go.
And let me add one thing on that. I beat Bill up all the time about the making money programs. We can't operate programs at a loss. Again, we're $18 trillion in debt in the nation, and every dollar counts. So if we have a program out there, it may be a great program, people may love it, but we don't have the ability, when it's a NAF-type program, to run it at a loss. We've got to have the patrons take advantage of it so we can make the money. And my thing is not, I don't want to be, I like to make money, but I'd rather I got to break even because we can't afford to run these things at a continual loss, even though we'd like to have them. We just, you can't do it from a business model perspective. And then we're moving a lot more direction towards that thing we get analyzed all the time. Hey, why do you have X? Are you making money on X? No, we're not. Okay, then either A, fire the management, redevelop your business model that you currently have out there, and if both those areas don't help, then close it. Because obviously it's not a demand. We're not getting a demand signal from the community that says this is important to us to the point where we want to continue to patronize that particular organization. So.
Good morning. Thank you for coming out today, and thank you for asking for a drill down on education. The Soldier for Life initiative recently went public. We tried to get it out of the Pentagon, to be honest, a long time ago, about 2010, but they did decide to launch it now. The unfortunate part of the timing is that we're going into a drawdown. So as we use that term with our soldier clients, it doesn't necessarily resonate with them, because especially for the about 30% that are separating early that we service every day, they don't necessarily want to hear that message. But what we're trying to build out going forward is basically a three-pillared approach. So as a gain to the installation, especially first-termers and their family members, planting the seed for education and lifelong learning, and then the middle pillar, keeping them as resilient and healthy and skill-based as they can be while they're serving for whatever period of time that's going to be. And then when they make the decision to leave, the military person and their family members, to make them as transition ready as they can be before they go back out. The good news for me is, in my service line, I don't anticipate any impacts in what we do. And if we do take a service cut in terms of money from the appropriated fund side of the house, the community around us is very supportive. We've got a lot of great schools, the 34 community and technical colleges in this state, all the publics and all the privates and all the for-profits basically are all in our court. And so using the GI Bill and tuition assistance and other funding sources, about 40% of our folks choose to stay in the state when they leave, because we have about 8,000 a year who separate. 40% stay, about 40% go into employment, about 42% are going into education. Some are working part-time or full-time while they're going to school. About 15% are going into the technical fields that recently got renamed Career Skills Program. Used to be called Career Technical. And that's the other good news story, is that we're trying to help education change the model from the traditional bachelor's degree in liberal arts, for example, that many of us, if you're a boomer, was beat into your head by your parents to go do that, is not necessarily what you need to do going forward. For the foreseeable future, about a third of all U.S. jobs will be associated with healthcare, some type of healthcare support. It could be in IT, it could be in administration, it could be in records, in all forms of care delivery. And a lot of the work that people will make good money doing, you need 2 years or less of training to do it. So if you could help me demystify or debunk the myth that we all have to go get a traditional 4-year college degree or more, is not necessarily the case, really. But the advisors in all of our schools, all the way through the P20 system, continue to beat that old message. So we're actually fighting advising staff and trying to help educate advising staff at every part of the educational continuum to help us with the real model. The German model in apprenticeships, where they track at an early age and you choose and you go into trades and there's no shame in going into skilled labor in Germany, we're actually trying to bring that model here to the United States. And it's a hard sell, though, because we're trying to change the way people think. But the good news is, if we can get more folks to go into, and I'll use one example, right up the street, advanced manufacturing. We have a strong partnership with an organization that feeds the supply chain to Boeing and many other high-tech firms, but they cannot get enough people. And they would love to have spouses, females, kids, our kids, dependent kids, as they grow up and go into the workforce. They would love to have them. We cannot give them enough labor. And that's across the board. Colonel Hodges mentioned UPS. And the good news story, if you could help me get this out as well, besides debunking the 4-year degree program, is the bar really isn't that high. If you just need to show up at work on time, be clean and sober, do what you're told, be task-oriented, work as a member of a team, be polite, basically what you should have learned in kindergarten. If you remember those lessons, you will do very well in the job market. And that's one of the reasons these companies like UPS and many others are reaching out to us, not just for our military folks, but our family members, is we understand that kind of stuff. And they are hungry for that, and they will hire you in a heartbeat. And so it's a very rosy picture for our community, is what I'd like to leave you with.
For the education piece of it all. And what Mark is saying is we're not saying that a four-year liberal arts degree is not a good thing to do because it's still very valuable in terms of expanding your knowledge and that kind of thing. But what the shift in higher education, because we pushed everybody, hey, you know, what, from when we were younger, a college degree was the separator. And what we're finding now is because everybody's going into four-year college, now it's graduate school is the separator. So how are you making yourself stand out from an employer perspective? And one of the challenges that we're having is you've got to talk about placement on the far end. So colleges now just get measured and racked and stacked. Well, we have X number of, you know, baccalaureate, X number of number one kids in their class coming out of here. We have a high GPA or a CT score was this. The measurements are changing now going, okay, that's cool. That's great. I'm glad you had all the most brilliant kids coming out of the high schools into your school. How are you placing them? So when we talk about education, all right, what school do I want to go to? Where do I want to put my money into? From a placement perspective on the far end, how many of your graduates from your institution, whether it be a 2-year or 4-year, are getting jobs? Because that's what we all want to measure. We don't want our kids graduating and then going, hey, I'm going to be living in the basement for the next 5 years. Cool. You know, or, you know, I hope there's no art history majors in here, but hey, I was an art history major. I'm now $100,000 in debt because of all the student loans, and I can't get a job. Versus a kid who goes through a welding program and is going to make, you know, 110 grand a year being a welder anywhere in this country. And so from an education perspective, I think we have to think more broadly now about what education means outside of it's a 4-year college degree, and that's the point of success rate. It's much broader than that. So I'll shut up now.
Okay, at this time, we're going to open up the questions to the floor. And we ask that you please stand, and Darlene has a mic. We ask that you please ask your question in the mic, and then we will direct that to the appropriate panel member to answer. So who would like to go first? I'm sure there's got to be questions.
I'm Connie Smith. Hi. I saw on the low-risk chart that the very first item on there was the Army Family Action Plan, and I was wondering how that got into the low category. From a spouse point of view, whatever money you spend on that is worth its weight in gold in empowerment, and having spouses have a constructive way to whine and to get things done. Because if there isn't a process, they're going to find ways to get their voices heard at the town hall meeting or whatever that usually isn't as helpful. If there's ways that people coming up to me say, from the brigade say, hey, Mrs. Smith, you know, I'm mad about this, I can say, oh, that is a family action plan issue. Let's write that down. And I can present that from a commander's spouse point of view in a very helpful, and it's got to be a good bang for your buck from my point of view. You know, I don't know what anybody else thinks, but.
I'll try to answer that one. Obviously, at the DA level, they prioritized, you know, everything according to a variety of factors. Just because it's on this list this way doesn't necessarily mean that the program would be eliminated completely. It might be that, for example, really the only appropriated funds, correct me if I'm wrong, going into the AFAP program is a person to run the program. So the decision might be from an Army level, because I don't think we would change any of the AFCS programs locally. The Army might decide that we're just not going to have a staff member do that. They may add those duties to somebody else because, well, maybe it's not a full-time requirement to have a person do just that. So we might have another position that assumes some of those duties, but then the program might change in the way that it's operated. The local conference is good, but I know right now you can go on to Army OneSource and you can submit issues electronically through that forum. So I think we're going to see some of these programs change in that manner so that maybe they don't cost as much in dollars to run them, but we're still able to submit critical issues through a variety of other means, through social media, through electronic methods. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for bringing up that point, Mrs. Smith. That's exactly right. AFAP is one of those programs that really empower families to get their information out to leadership, both at the local and obviously all the way up to big Army. My understanding of the changes to AFAP have to do with You got your local conferences currently. It used to be that then there was that middle area, the MACOM, I guess, conferences, and then you would have the big APAP conference in DC, which they no longer have. And the only thing that, well, not the only thing, it's a big thing, but the GOSC, the General Officer Steering Committee, meets and discusses all the issues that go all the way up to the GOSC. What I didn't realize is AUSA's connection to AFAP, and that is that AFAP actually started back in Washington, D.C. through AAGWA, the Army Wives Club of the Greater Washington area. They decided that it would be a great opportunity to have families get together and discuss issues. And what I heard was that, what I learned is that AUSA actually funded that very first AFAP conference. And so my question is, as you see funding diminish, is there the opportunity for partnership again with some of like the local AUSA chapters that might have some means of being able to at least host an AFAP conference, save the garrison some money, still provide the opportunity for family members to have their voices heard, and kind of going back to the original intent when it first rolled out?
I would say the answer to that question is yes.
Yes.
And again, I think if you look at that particular program, we have cut the fat off of that program. I mean, that fat now is down to, truly skeletal and muscle. So it's not, we're not sending people off to DC. What we have in it now is pretty boiled down, and it's still a very, very effective forum to get some of these key issues. You get lots of issues coming in, and there's a couple in there like, wow, that is a big one. And we've seen the result of that program make true policy changes across the Army and across the DoD. So I think it's still an important forum. But the opportunity to, as I always say, we're always looking for other people's money right now, or free chicken. So either one of those, that's, AUSA brings it, that's free chicken, to bring the forums together to talk about things. So.
I just want to make a quick comment back on what you had said. Now, I'm old school, so maybe this is just reflecting my age. But there is something very different in a feeling tone and an involvement to having a conference, having leadership there, working things out within the spouses, sending that to someone, whatever the heck they do with it is their business, but having that be involved rather than just, sorry, I gesture wildly, rather than just clicking a button on a computer. And so although I think it's helpful to have places online where we go and we click a button, we've got a myriad of those for every kind of different way to whine. But there's a way different feeling tone for me personally, and actually having there be a process that is looked at by someone, rather than just my wine goes to the click of the big huge bin with 5,000 other people's wine.
Okay.
Hi, Kat Reynolds. My question is, I also saw on the low-risk bin chart that FRSAs are possibly going to be one of the items that could be changed. First, a comment. I think in my own opinion, having worked with several different FRSAs at different levels within the military, they are a great asset, but they can also disrupt, I guess, unit life and information that needs to happen within an organization. I was wondering if somebody could please speak to what changes they are looking at for the program, and if the program is going to be eradicated because of the over-regulations or over-regulatory parts of what we see at the unit level, which has made FRSAs so nice to have. If we're getting rid of them, we need to get rid of some of the regulations that really can choke an organization and choke a senior advisor in a unit. Thank you.
I will jump on this because Darlene knows this. This is one of my personal pet peeves and one of the bandwagons to jump on. I think it was the greatest program ever created as a unit commander, and I agree there's some FRSAs have had issues. That's always personality based in terms of the hiring process, but it was the only mandatory program. The Army mandates it. It says you will have, at the company level, an FRG, written. They never resourced it until the FRSAs. And even at the FRSAs, they didn't resource it at the company level where it was mandated. They resourced it at the battalion level, at the brigade level on up initially. And then we've seen, and Darlene could probably give more details, but we've seen the gradual cutting and elimination of that now. To now, I think we're down, Darlene, right, just to the division level, or is it the brigade? Yeah, 2 per brigade. Yeah, 2 per brigade. So it's, in my mind, as former commander, a fantastic organization, because then it took the onus off some volunteer. Because here's the reality of it. When are FRGs the most important? When folks are deployed. Okay, who normally is the FRG person, not the leader, because I always say the commander is the leader of that program. I made that perfectly clear in my organization. The FRG, who was that person? It was a spouse. And it was a volunteer spouse who was already dealing with the stresses of spouse deployed, kids, single parent, all the things that you go on, and that allowed the FRSAs to take a lot of that pressure off and to work for that commander to do a lot of things that we were expecting volunteers to do. So personal opinion is it's something, if I had put it on there, they'd be my number one of my number ones up there in terms of supporting units. But again, big Army decisions that have made to eliminate those and cut those down to now at the two at the brigade level. So again, I personally think it's a great program that needs to be sustained, and one that I would love our voices to be heard on that. But again, it's like you said, you get a couple ones that there's personality conflicts going on inside of it all, and then, hey, we're ready to throw the whole baby out with the bathwater because of a couple individuals versus an overall program that's been fantastic. And Darlene's been, I remember the first hiring event here at JBLM back in 2006 or 7, what it was, when I sat on the panel with Darlene as we were going through hiring those folks, and said it then, finally, we were applying resources to an area we say is important. Families are important, all right? Families are important, yet we didn't resource it until the FRSAs. So I will jump off my soapbox now on this one. But again, I think it's a discussion we need to have, and our voices need to be heard. If we think it's viable and we want to actually apply resources, then we need to express that because it is being sliced and diced and cut every single day. So.
I don't want to steal Alicia's thunder on it, but as I understand it, we have 14 right now on the ground, and by the end of September, we'll be down to 3 funded positions going forward. And then I know she's dusting off the Family Readiness Liaison process, right? Unit Service Coordinator, to try to help bridge that gap, right? Did you want to go in more detail? Or?
Okay, so yes, in Armed Forces Community Service, we are revitalizing the Unit Service Coordinator program, which is a regulatory requirement for us. It's an other duty of many of my staff. It's in their job description to perform those. And so we've been working with Darlene and Linda and Bobby and bridging the gap when the FERSs do go away so that we still have a link to at least the services piece in DFMWR and in Mark's area and DHR, because there's a lot of services, and also bringing Madigan in as well, so that when we go out and meet once a month with the unit commanders, if they have needs within the unit, will be their link to services, and then they'll be the link to the FRGs and the family readiness liaisons where they've been appointed. The other thing I think is important for you to understand is FORCECOM, Forces Command, has made the decision in terms of a budget cut for the FRSAs to go away. IMCOM, which we are your service providers, Installation Management Command, we don't have any control over that funding stream to say whether or not we can continue to have them here. So if you weren't familiar with the funding stream, that's very important.
So what you're saying is go back to your spouses and raise holy hell. Raise came with them about, hey, this needs to stick around there, so then the voice can be heard up through General Lanza, back up to FORCECOM, going, hey, this needs to be a priority. If we feel, again, I'm getting too passionate about this, if you all feel as strongly that that's an important program.
I believe we did send that issue up from AFAP this year. Yeah, that was one of the big ones. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry.
One of the points that I would like to have addressed, as I'd mentioned earlier, the regulatory environment, where the FRSAs truly came into their own. And I also agree that they are an important asset to the units. But my fear is that if the FRSAs go away through FORCECOM, what support can we expect from FORCECOM to help deregulate all the regulations that they have put into place that literally can strangle somebody with paperwork if we don't have the FRSAs there? I think that we need to take, if they're going to introduce a program and take it away, that some of these regulations that they have put in place, they need to rethink and maybe back off on those or amend them.
Totally agree. Darlene, you want to?
Very question. Family readiness is an inspectable program, and I think that's what you're referring to. And within the division, we've tried really hard to kind of mitigate some of those constraints. So what we've taken is our checklist, and we've tailored it down just to regulatory base. If you look at AR-6081 Appendix J, it's only a couple of pages. So we really, really try to focus on those really critical areas, such as maintaining a roster. Informal funds is very critical. So within the division, we've tried really, really hard to make it just one page so it's not such a hindrance to the commanders. So if they focus on those couple of things, and in addition to that, so we meet with the commanders, we say, okay, sir, here's your expectations, what have you done from the family readiness side, and we've tried to educate them so that as they move forward, it kind of benefits them. So they're not taking that all at once. So within the division, I sit down when I conduct my inspection and just meet with the commanders and say, okay, here's what you need to do, here's how I can help you. If you do these things, you will be successful. Does that make sense? Yeah.
One more thing on there in terms of commanders' responsibilities too.
Right.
Okay, so I'll talk about that because commanders, it's a commanders program, and you see, I'm not gonna, there's probably a lot of commanders. Hey, honey, where are you? Peace out. FRG is you, and I'm walking away from it. No. It's a commander's program. The commander is the FRG leader in that organization, and so they have to take on some responsibility, just like they would focusing on any other task they've been given. They've got to give the appropriate level of emphasis on it and leadership applied to it, and not just dump it on, that's the wrong word, pass that on to either their spouse or another volunteer within the organization saying, hey, I don't want, here's a successful program for me is I don't have to hear about it. Well, that's not the right thing to say there, Commander. You need to be just as involved with your families as you are with the young service members in your unit. So.
Okay, we have a question in the back.
Hi, Peggy Cleveland. I've read a couple articles in the media lately about medical and how there's this discussion that it may be turned into an insurance-type program versus the full coverage that we have now. And it was based on surveys of military person, the family members saying that we're dissatisfied with TRICARE. And I was wondering if you could discuss that, because for me, that's one of the biggest benefits that we have as a family member is that full medical coverage.
Talk expertly on that. I wish Ramona was here from Madigan. Going to look at all, but I'm not aware of that. I think the pay and compensation packages are being looked at right now as part of it all, but I've not heard working on medical.
Sure, but go ahead. Oh, okay, yes, the commission, re-looked at the compensation package, and as you probably all know, it's been in the press, that most of the Department of Defense discretionary funding is for personnel costs, including health care. So as the boomers and retirees draw on the medical demands inside our system, inside the Department of Defense, that's a huge cost. So they are reviewing it and cost sharing the model for healthcare delivery is one of the big possibilities that we're all going to face. So yes, our copays could probably go up potentially. And then also the retirement system was part of the review. And so a vested type contribution, we have the defined benefit pension plan that we have right now, which is great in my opinion. But moving more towards a private model where you put in more money like we currently have with the thrift savings program, the TSP, and pushing more towards that, and that's been in the press as well. But we've got to figure out a way to bring down those personnel costs or raise revenue.
Yeah, I just wanted to add so the MCRMC report has created an awful lot of buzz up in Washington, D.C., as you can imagine. At the same time, the FY16 budget came out as well. We're probably more concerned about the FY16 budget because that's something that has to be, run through Congress, and they have to decide on what they're going to pass. But the reason I asked for the mic is I really encourage all of you to, whatever association, organization, congressman, senator, whoever you are connected to, you need to let them know what your feelings are both those things. Because the FY16 budget also includes not providing the ECI the cost of index living, the full amount. I think it's 2.8% is what we should get this next year, but actually I think they're only providing us 1.3%, if I'm not mistaken. So we're starting to see real gaps in, we're taking money out of our pocketbooks. The BAH is lowered. There's talk about making folks that live on the installation actually pay a little bit towards BAH. So little by little, you're seeing things coming out of your pocketbook, and if you don't let your representatives or come to AUSA, whoever, obviously I'm from AUSA, so I'm going to talk about that, but we do have letters that you can write to Congress, whatever, just letting them know how you feel, because I also wonder where did these 1,100 folks come from that are talking about, yeah, put us outside on the, on another insurance plan when I'm fine with TRICARE. But not everybody is, and I recognize that. And it is a cost, and we have to have a discussion on it. And Senator Graham, basically during some of the hearings, Senator Graham said, no matter what happens, something's going to have to give here. So put your voice and make your voice heard now.
Okay, do we have any questions on this side of the room? It's been quiet over here. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to finish this up on the medical. I think the thing that concerned me the most about the article was some of the consideration of this was the fact that it was based on surveys and complaints about our medical care, which I think we're just so privileged to have. And I think a lot of that may be people that are junior and new to the military, haven't had a lot of experience with the civilian medical field. And so our complaints about this, may be causing us to lose this benefit. And I don't think anybody has a real idea of what it costs when every time you go to the doctor, it's a $20 copay. Every time you have a surgery, it's a 20%. And especially with junior soldiers, that's a huge expense. And also a lot of the medical issues that we have, the soldiers will be covered, but nobody's considering a lot of the medical issues that the spouses and families have are military related due to stress and things like that.
Hi, Pete Fiore. I'm the spouse of the Madigan commander. Chuck, what you said was very important because Denny Heck and his staff were at Madigan earlier this week talking about just that sort of thing. And Madigan's going to be around for quite some time, but there's a lot of discussion of what health care will look like as we go over the next decade. And, ma'am, your comments were absolutely dead on target. Most of the time, the people that are unhappy are going to raise a ruckus. If you're very happy with what you're doing, you're going to say, okay, this is good, and you're not going to raise a ruckus. So if Congressman Heck and Senator Murray and Senator Cantwell are interested enough to meet with Madigan, at Madigan or other places, there's some concern about that, and there's some interest. I don't think that anybody can seriously consider getting rid of the military medical system because we're Madigan, I've got something to say about it. And Madigan is a force projection hospital for First Corps. And I don't think you're going to get a $1 million heart surgeon that all of a sudden says, gee, I really want to volunteer to go to Afghanistan or Iraq all of a sudden. And so there has to be some specialized training and preparation for just doing that mission, which the Army is supposed to do. But I do know that Mr. Ray Horoho, who is the spouse of the Army Surgeon General, was here last week. And I had the opportunity to spend the morning with him. And some of the concerns that you're talking about are being addressed on a daily basis at the Office of the Surgeon General for the Army and for Defense Health. But as was said up front, if you can send a lovely note or a handshake or a meeting next time you see Congressman Heck or any of your other representatives, please do so. But Madigan's going to be around for a while, and thank you very much. The second question I have is, when you mention jobs, and you mention that employers around the area are hiring, spouses are a notoriously, or either notoriously or gloriously, a mobile society. I've had to work hard for the last 20 years to keep a gig going. And so I've been very fortunate to be an engineer for Harris Corporation, living in 8 different states over the last 20 years. How do the local folks feel about hiring a mobile employee base?
At Greater Outreach. We had the event in January. I think we had, I can't remember, 49 or 50 jobs that day. Starbucks announced their program where if you're a Starbucks employee and a spouse, you can then, when your husband or wife PCSs, PCS with them with guaranteed employment on the farm at Starbucks. UPS, talking to them yesterday, the same thing. So people have realized that when we talk about, our unemployment rate in the nation now is what, 5.4, I think it is. So we're almost at full employment. there's not enough employees for the job requirements that are out there in this nation. And so people realize, hey, the military is a great resource, especially as they downsize, but the spouses are even a greater resource going on. So the whole there's been like an aha moment for industry out there that we need to tap into those folks. Now, it's always still going to be difficult because of the nomad lifestyle that we have in the military. But there is a acknowledgement of industry out there that we want to hire folks. And here locally, I can go down the list of Amazon, Starbucks, Microsoft, TrueBlue, Williams-Sonoma. I can go down the list of a bunch of companies there that I know right now are actively recruiting and want to hire military spouses. And I tell you, sort of the trend is also, if you have a data input skill set and you want to stay at home, the whole shift now of no longer having brick and mortar facilities is going away, and more telecommuting work is becoming more and more popular because of the cost savings that businesses achieve. Obviously, there's a certain skill set you need, but that's out there as well. So I think we're starting to see a shift where if you want a job, you're going to have the opportunity to get a job, and then the ability to transfer it around is also going to increase. Mark?
If you know where those jobs are, or somebody on post knows where those jobs are, rather than somebody like me going out, hey, I just got to Fort Lewis or JBL. Boy, that's old school, isn't it, Fort Lewis? I just got to JBLM, I'd like to get a gig. Instead of going to places and just random, is there a list of folks that are spouse? And that's exactly my point, is I'm trying to lead to that. Yeah. Is if there is a repository of that information, it would be really nice to have. If you try these places, you really got a better chance than just doing a random shot.
Alicia, what we've done is Alicia had her spouse hiring program. We combined that together now with the Soldier for Life program, and so now there's out there. So JBLM Unlimited is the website and the Facebook site that posts jobs every day. I mean, and these are not, hey, here, come make $9 an hour. There's stuff out there. So Alicia, go ahead. You're the expert on this one. I'm not.
Well, and we developed JBLM Unlimited to be just that, a job posting, so that employers can post jobs on a Facebook page, and then, obviously, I think probably just about everybody has Facebook. You like that page and you will see the daily postings. What we recently did was combine that with the Transition Assistance Facebook page, and as of last Wednesday, we have close to 5,800 followers on that job board, if you will. So the local employers are very well connected to that. That was probably the best technology tool we could have implemented, and we really just implemented it last November. And so from November till now, we're approaching 6,000 fans on those two combined sites, so it's proven to be very successful. And we have a lot of people calling in, how do I post, how do I post? We have a standard format. We have staff that actually vet the employers so that we don't have rogue people out there posting things that they shouldn't be. So we do vet them first before they get posted. Mark?
And I'd just like to add that spouses and working age kids are invited and encouraged to attend any of our transition opportunities. And frankly, that's an appeal I have to you, to please help us get the word out. We did just recently start a spouse transition workshop, and we had a very small turnout, but it was a start. But our services are available, and so we're integrated. So Building 2166 across the street from Waller Hall is where her employment readiness. Oh, you moved it to McCord? 551, the former Airmen and Family Readiness Center, right? Okay, awesome. Yes. But we have a variety of service locations around the base in addition to the technology that Alicia mentioned. But back to your point, sir, the certification piece is the hardest. If the spouse is in a field that requires state certification, that's one of our biggest challenges, and we've been working on that for many years now. We continue to work on it. We have about 34 of the 50 states that are looking more stringently at reciprocal arrangements or lowering the bar. So if you have a license or a credential or certification in one state, making it easier when you move, if you're a teacher or a real estate agent or pick a field. Hairstylists in many states have to have a credential or certification. So we're fighting the trend towards certifications because every field, more and more fields are requiring certifications for a variety of fields that a few years back they didn't. But frankly, it's a labor protection scheme inside those states. They want to keep their folks employed, and I understand that, but it's a penalty, as you all know, for our mobile population. And so the good news is the members of Congress really get that, and they're really trying to help us work with the states, but it's a state-by-state battle that we're working on. So my last piece of advice would be, if you are going to change fields, try to look for something that has national certification, like the IT field, for example, is moving towards more industry-recognized credentialing, so that when you move around, you don't have to fight the state issue. That would be a tip for you.
Okay. Any other questions? There has to be more questions. We still have our subject matter experts for 7 more minutes. Now's your chance.
Thank you so much, because the DOD State Liaison Office, Mark Sansuzi, a lot of you guys know him. If you go on, is it Hooray for Families? I can never remember the website. But anyway, the DOD State Liaison Office has a list of the 10 issues that they're working really hard at the state level to support military and military family members. And one of them is that transferability of certifications and licensures. And the Joining Forces initiative through the White House, Mrs. Obama, Mrs. Biden, have done a lot of work in collecting those best practices that states are using to help transport those licenses. It's something to check out if you want to know more information on it.
Questions? Wow. Okay. Okay, well then I guess we'll wrap it up unless you all have any further comments that you want to close with.
Change. I mean, that's the reality of it all. I say, if you hate change, you're going to love irrelevancy. And so right now we don't want to be irrelevant. So we're going to see a lot of things that we've all grown up with as senior or experienced folks that we've seen that are going to change. And we've seen changes, I know we all have, over our careers on how the Army and how the military has changed over. The challenge we've got with is our younger folks. So those people who are 10 years and less, all they've known is the full, the checkbook was wide open. And so all these services that we've been providing for the past 10 years that they've grown accustomed to and grown entitled to, that we didn't have when we were young, are now the ones that are potentially going away. And that's going to be our most difficult sell, is how do you explain to someone, what do you mean? This is the way it's always been. I've been in the Army for 10 years, and it's always been this way. Well, it wasn't this way back in 1990. It wasn't this way back in 1989. But how do you communicate those changes to them without having open revolt where they're actually outside with torches and pitchforks burning down my building? Okay, so that's the reality. So we got to expect it, and we as the senior leadership have to be the ones that are willing to communicate that and articulate to that on why this is occurring. It's not because we want to. It's not because we hate families and dislike them all. It's because of the financial realities of a nation that's $18 trillion in debt, a military that's still under sequestration requirements out there, and a military that's going to be cut drastically in terms of overall force strength here over the next few years. So I think we have to be honest and upfront about it, go ugly early, and not try to sugarcoat it on some of the things that are going to change. And it's just the reality.
I just have one question. We've seen these kind of low risk, moderate risk for quite a few years. When is this going to be decided on? Like, this is all on the chopping block or on the board, but
that's a great question, Madeline, because I ask this question all the time. Hey, we've done this. They've asked for data calls. We've racked and stacked them multiple times. And someone told me the other day was, everyone's scared, frankly, to truly make those final hard-cut prioritizations and be that leadership that did it all. So we don't know. I think we'll find a big hard decision coming up here real soon is the TA announcement that we hope to hear in June. Okay, what's JBLM going to look like if we go to the 450 or 420 model? What's going to be left? Well, no one can tell us, and no one's willing to step forward and say, here I am, the bearer of bad news, let me articulate it. So I don't know the answer. I don't think anyone knows the answer. I'm sure someone back in D.C. does, but we don't know here.
but we're not privy. I got it. But these charts change. Last year's chart, although some of these programs have been repetitive, on the same list, but it keeps changing. So I guess the question is, how does it change? By our word?
To some degree, what's sent up forward from people being vocal, obviously, and through like AFAP and other avenues that they have to express concerns. The other piece of it is, if you look at the chart as a whole, where it's in high, medium, and low risk, this is actually set up to be a tool for the commander, i.e. Colonel Hodges, and the DFMWR and DHR, because those programs are all their programs are on this chart. It's a tool to use as if you look at JBLM as an installation and say, okay, where can I, Colonel Hodges, Mr. Harvey, Mark Brown, where can I take risk? If I stop doing this program, will there be any risk to life, health, or safety? So anything that's in that low risk, if we stop doing it or scaled back that program, there would be no risk to life, health, or safety. When you get into that middle bin, moderate risk, then you have to really analyze your population and say, you know, what are the issues that we face here as being one of the big three in a power projection platform? If I were to cut one of these programs, what risk am I willing to take? What risk could potentially happen by stopping this program or scaling it back? And then, of course, in the high risk bin, you're going to take a significant risk, and there could be impact to life, health, or safety if you were to stop doing one of those programs. So that's the philosophy behind the bin chart, if you will. And so it's really meant to be used as a tool. It's not a drop dead, if you stop getting money, we cut all this out. And I think it's a little confusing the way it's set up, that it's not necessarily to say this, everything in this program, in this bin will stop. And that's not how it is. Because we really do, and I say we, have influence with the IMCOM leadership to say, this program is very important here, and if you don't fund this program and we have to stop doing it, then here, you know, General Halverson IMCOM is the risk that you're going to take at JBLM by stopping this program. So we do have influence.
And understand why this is going on for mostly DFM WR programs. We're doing the same thing outside of mission requirements, okay? So right now is life, health, and safety. What she didn't mention was mission. And so as I'm getting slashed and diced and cut apart, I'm like, okay, I've got to be able to maintain the airfields, maintain training lands, and maintain the buildings and the roads. Everything else is gravy. And so that we're at that point now where we're truly doing that analysis as we're getting, I mean, again, I don't want to whine about our problems, but we're getting cut every single day from a manpower perspective, from a money perspective, every day. And every time I go, okay, let's prioritize this again. Again, I got to keep the training areas open, the airfields open, the roads going, and the buildings upright. Okay, everything else, let's talk about it now. But we're getting to that point with the level of cuts. And again, sequestration, the big elephant in the room that's out there, sequestration is still the law of the land. It is a law signed by the President of the United States and passed by both houses of Congress. And so that's what's going on, and we don't have a resolution for it yet. And so when we start getting to those numbers, that's why you're hearing the 450, 420 numbers out there, and you're hearing, okay, do we, shutdowns and all those kind of things, because it's out there, and it's just the reality of the kind of dealings we're dealing with. So this is one priority list. I've got my other priority list of, okay, which buildings do I fix this year, or do I defer that maintenance for 10 years? And then guess what, building, you're going to suffer for the next 10 years because I just don't have the money to put into it all. So.
Okay, and one quick thing, the website that Patty mentioned is USA for Military Families. And if you would just Google USA for the number 4, military families, the website, it's a Department of Defense website, and that's where you can go and look at what issues are being worked in Washington State, or if you're transitioning to another state, you can look at that state as well. So.
Okay, I want to say thank you to our panel members for coming today, for spending your time with us, for giving us, the senior spouses, an opportunity to have input. I think they opened the door for you, so your input is definitely accepted. Thanks to all of you for coming.